The Ukulele Reviews Podcast. Welcome back. Thank you guys for tuning in. And today we have an exciting episode. We have David Ingalls from Ashland, Oregon.
Yeah.
The luthier behind Ono Ukuleles. Thank you so much, David and Jan, as well, for coming down and spending some time with us, having a conversation, and how you been?
Great, it's good to be back. We came over, I think, for the fourth time for the Ukulele Guild of Hawaii exhibition, which this time was held at the Bishop Museum, and came off very, very well. A lot of interesting builders there with a lot of interesting instruments. So there was a lot to see and learn.
Yeah, talk about that. What did you like? As far as, other builders, what did you find interesting?
Well, there's an awful lot of stuff, and there are builders, of course, from Hawaii, probably I'd say the majority, but also builders from the mainland and several from Asia as well. And they're just different styles, and there's so many different ways people have of doing things, both structurally and in terms of the aesthetic appearance of the instrument. And so you can pick up a lot of good ideas about what other people are doing, and some of which I'll want to incorporate in my own instruments. So it's really a good thing for me, because I live in what I sometimes call an ukulele wasteland. There just aren't very many builders in my neck of the woods in Southern Oregon. So there aren't people I can go see and talk to in person about what they're doing and show them what I'm doing and trade ideas. The internet makes that easier than it would have been years ago, but still, it's fun to get together eyeball to eyeball with people and talk about what they're up to and what works for them and what they're planning on doing to make changes to their own instruments.
Yeah, totally. And you usually do make it over once, for this thing every year, right?
Yes. Yeah, I think I missed last year, unfortunately, but I hope I won't do that again.
Well, we've missed having Ono ukuleles on the website, featuring them. So I'm especially grateful for 3 new arrivals.
Yeah.
And one thing I like about you is that you are always rethinking things. You're a student, of this craft of lutherie, and you're always looking, talking and trying to figure out other ways, experimenting. Talk some about your recent kind of evolution in your builds.
I've made some fairly minor changes. I've always used a cantilevered fretboard. The fretboard isn't in contact with the top, and I'm still doing it that way, pretty much structurally the same, but with a added aesthetic component, which makes it look a little bit nicer, and also makes the extension of the fretboard over the top much stiffer. And so that's a nice thing to add. The big thing,
it's beautiful. I love that addition.
It is. I think it's a visual improvement.
Right.
And I've always used carbon fiber in the extension. It's set into the underside of the board, and I still do that. And that was pretty stiff, but now the extension is so stiff that there's really no amount of finger pressure you can put on it that moves it at all.
Right. So now there's carbon fiber kind of in between the 2 ebony pieces.
Yes. Yeah, and I'll keep doing that, even though I'm not really sure it's necessary. But it's a little thing to do, and it's good insurance.
Right.
So we'll keep doing it that way. But the biggest thing I've done in the past, about a year and a half, is I've been working on laminated sides and backs, and that's in the instrument world, as in a lot of other things, there's nothing new under the sun. Instrument builders have been doing laminated sides and backs for a long, long time. And as far as I can tell, it goes back decades or even maybe 100 years or so in the classical guitar world.
Sure.
Some of the old builders did the same thing. And so it's, as I say, it's not really new, but the application to uke seems to be fairly new. And I came across it when one day I was looking through a book I have on classical guitar construction by a luthier named John Bogdanovich. He has a really nice book that has a lot of good information in it, mainly about building techniques. And that's important for a uke builder because although we all know that the uke is a completely different instrument from a guitar, you can't just scale down a classical guitar and make a uke. There are many things about it that are unique. They still derive from the same lineage. And much of the construction techniques that are used in ukes are much the same or similar to construction techniques used in classical guitars. A big example would be something we all know about, and that's the bracing pattern on the top. Classical guitars typically use fan bracing, which is generally, well, at least the most common form of bracing in tenor and baritone ukuleles. So looking at what classical guitar builders do and have done may have some value. And I'd pick up that book every so often if I'd ask myself, well, is there a better way to do some construction step that I'm doing? How does a classical guitar builder do it? And I learned a few things from that. And then one day I sat down and decided I was going to read the whole book just because I should probably do that. And I came across the information that Bogdanovich makes laminated sides for his classical guitars. And I got to thinking about that and sort of asked why he was doing that. And did a little bit of scouting around on the internet and looking in some books. And I thought it would be a good thing to try. So I started doing some prototyping of how would I laminate them, how would I clamp them, how would I make that all work from a mechanical point of view. And when I did that, I discovered that our friend Bo Hannum, who's a guitar and ukulele luthier in Colorado, was posting some things about his work with laminated sides. So I got in touch with Bo and we exchanged some information about what I was doing and what he was doing and gluing methods and that sort of thing. And he also put me on to some very good information that's out there in books written by Gerard Gillet and Trevor Gore. And Bo worked with them when he was in Australia as a partner. I think they were among his teachers in the craft. And so I bought their books. They literally wrote the book. They have two incredibly detailed volumes on design and construction, and studied what they had to say about laminated sides and why they do it. And also, there's a very interesting YouTube that's easily found of Trevor Gore being interviewed by Robbie O'Brien, who does all those YouTubes for LMII, the luthier supply company. And Gore explains the real reason for doing it. He's a very technical guy. He had a long engineering career, and he's very mathematically oriented. And much of what he writes in his books is pretty dense for people like me who aren't really super at math. But the gist of it is that he feels that by making the sides of an acoustic instrument more massive, not stiffer but more massive, that tends to isolate the vibration of the top and keep it from bleeding off into a structure of the instrument where it doesn't effectively make more and better sound. And Trevor Gore might think I really oversimplified that, and maybe I have, but I think that really is the...
No, I think it's become more, I mean, there's different theory, people go about it differently, but that sort of like drum, type of a theory on you just want very stiff sides. I did a workshop for a couple weeks with Charles Fox back like 20 years ago or something, but that was part of his thing is, and I feel like he was doing some laminated sides at that time too, but he was one of the guys that pioneered the like solid kerfing as well for that
Right.
sort of, reason. And but did Trevor go into like the laminated back? Because I know that's, I mean,
I don't think so. I don't think that's part of what I've read about his
Right.
building. But I also tried doing laminated backs, and the theory there is a little bit different. You're not really trying to add mass or weight to the back. What you're trying to do is make the back stiff without braces, and also it remains somewhat resonant. And we can see that on my instruments. The back still has a tap tone. It's not like it went dead.
oh yeah, totally. And man, I hope I'm not wrong, but I feel like Pepe Romero's new bracing does that same thing. Are you familiar with that?
Yeah, and a couple of years ago when I was here, Pepe came by when I happened to be here at the shop, and we did look at an instrument that he brought, and it did have, I think it had both laminated back, and hasn't he done a laminated top also?
Yeah, it's a
laminated?
little bit different because the what is he, skin bracing is what he calls his tops, because it's graduated and it's only in a certain section, so it's not a fully laminated, but it's I feel like the back is all to the same.
And I think he had the grain not quite cross grain, but a little bit splayed like so.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't really know what the theory is behind that.
But they sound great.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And I mean, I feel like a lot of people's perceptions, I mean, but the thing is, there's a big difference between laminated for cost by cheaper imports and a thoughtful reason from a luthier. And I know, what's the guy in Australia? Smallman? Have you seen his work?
I've heard of him.
Yeah, I've heard. I've heard recordings of guitars, but he used a laminated back, and I mean, he's got a whole different. He's the one who did he does like a lattice bracing with the. Anyways, his guitars go for like 20 grand plus or something, and he's choosing to do laminate side and back, and they, you have like classical. Come in, Corey.
Hey.
Hello, Corey.
Sorry, mate. It's all right. You brought alcohol, so you're forgiven. But yeah, I mean, you've got like some of the world's best classical guitar players choosing to yada yada. Anyways, and I don't know. I feel like Ramirez was doing it way back when for kind of expensive.
That's true. He's one of the classical builders who's often used as an example of why this is a good idea.
But man, it's going to take some like readjustment from people's perceptions. I wish people would just go by their ear and eyes and like give less credence to what they think they know. But I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
That's right. It's all about the sound that you get from the instrument, and if it works, if it's a technique that works for a particular luthier, by all means, the builder's done a good thing. If it's used in a way that doesn't improve the instruments that somebody's building, then obviously it has no real value. So that the proof is in the pudding. And as we all know, there are lots of ways to do things in instrument building, and saying that one person does something in a certain way and is successful really doesn't have a lot of impact on what other people are doing, because somebody else may be getting an equivalent quality or a particular sound that person likes out of a different technique.
Yeah, there's so many different factors that go into what makes the sound, but we can say definitively that like some of the best guitar builders at this point in time choose not like it's any cost benefit, the time that's involved in laminating and all like that, but they choose that, and you're at this point offering an either or to, people custom ordering.
Right.
Here's what I want. I want you to build us nearly identical instruments, but one with all solid, one with the laminated side and back. And it might be interesting for you too. I mean, maybe you've done this already. Have you?
I have.
And what did you think sound-wise?
Yeah, right now I have in my possession one of my tenors that was built conventionally. And I've built a total of 5 tenors with laminated sides and back. And I do hear a difference. What I get out of the laminated bodies is more volume and more sustain. And the sustain is particularly noticeable.
Wow.
I think it would be a good idea, though, to do as you say and build 2 instruments side by side so that you've done as much as you possibly can to make them similar, and with the same top and the same top bracing, and see how that all plays out. That's a good idea. I did that sort of with the 2 tenors that I brought over this time. They were built side by side. They both have Adirondack spruce tops, identical Adirondack bracing, and the only difference being that one is a 17-inch scale and the other is an 18-inch scale. And I did that specifically to try to evaluate the difference between those 2 scale lengths.
Yeah, the sound is profoundly different in those two, from what I heard. I mean, it's audible at least.
Yeah, I can tell the difference. It's not that one's better than the other. Somebody who likes a traditional tenor sound is probably going to want to stay with the 17-inch scale. The 18-inch gives you a little more finger room, which some people like. And it also has a somewhat more resonant sound, and that may be partly due to the fact that
you think the 18 is more resonant.
Well, I don't know that that's the right
but then,
word. And
like
people
the
use
17 is almost warmer in a certain way.
Yeah.
But
the 18-inch is tuned down a half step, so that the string tension is the same. Because I've also used exactly the same strings on it. And I wanted to make the tension similar between the two, because the string tension has a pretty important effect on the sound you're going to get out of the instrument.
Sure. Oh, so it's probably at a half step down, retaining that warmth of
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. I think warmth may be a better word than resonance there. Depends on how you use those words. But
adjectives for sound are always kind of tricky,
but there is a difference. But I like the idea of building a conventional instrument.
Oh, the party has started.
Sorry. Corey's here.
Well, you can't keep
Tried to be
Corey
as
down,
silent
can
as
you?
possible. It didn't work.
You're opening up a can. You can't be silent.
I did it once.
He's been
I
watching
did it a few
toddlers
times.
all day, so
Yeah. I literally just woke up 3 hours ago. So.
Really?
No, I took a nap with the kids. I always do.
Oh.
And I didn't have time to put on my regular shirt.
You're out of
No pass it
uniform
on today.
Yeah.
Don't worry, we all are.
Yeah.
Except for Alan.
Andrew got the nice aloha.
Yeah.
State of mind
Still
shirt.
got aloha.
Sorry, where were we at?
Excuse me.
I had a question. Does it? Is there like a few more does it take a bit longer to do a laminated back and sides?
Well, there are trade-offs. It's easier to bend the sides, because when you do a conventional build, bending the sides is a pretty exacting process. They need to be really close to perfect, or what you want them to be. When you're doing laminates, though, each piece of wood is a lot thinner than a conventional side, so they bend more easily, and they don't have to be bent perfectly to fit in the mold. You have to bend the waist to just enough so that it doesn't break when you put it in the mold and push it into shape. And same with the upper bout. The lower bout, I put a little bend in it, but it's not going to break with that much curvature. So there's probably about the same time spent in bending the sides, because there are 3 pieces of hardwood. and you have to bend 6 times, but it's so much quicker. And then one plus on the laminated sides is that no matter what wood you're using, even a highly figured wood like quilted maple, for example, if you build a solid quilted maple side, it often wants to bend in kind of steps or in facets. It doesn't want to bend smoothly no matter what. So you end up doing a little bit of sanding to make it smooth. And that's true of a lot of woods. But with the laminated, the thin pieces do bend well, and then when they're clamped into a mold and glued as a unit, it comes out very, very flat and smooth on the outer surface. The inner surface too. It doesn't really matter as much, but on the outer surface you end up doing very little sanding to make it the way you want it, but once it's finished and it's sprayed with a glossy finish, you don't want to see any reflections that are squiggly marks or off angles or whatever. You want to see nice straight reflections along the sides of the body, and that's what you get.
Yeah, and even like over time, you're not going to get as much movement, like especially with sides. Like I see that in older instruments a lot of times, like the sides will start to warp a little bit, but that affects the whole box, you know. So just to have that stability over time. I feel like you use solid linings as well, right?
Yeah, I started using solid linings early on in my building career, so I've been doing that for years. The reason I did it was because I felt that there's so little real estate on the top of an ukulele that you want to be able to use as much of the area as you can to vibrate and to make sound. And the laminated linings are just thinner than kerfed linings. Kerf being the when you look inside and look at the junction between the back and the sides, or the top and the sides, and you see those little pieces with slots cut in them every quarter inch or so. That's called a kerfed lining. But they're wider, and so they they intrude onto the area of the top a little bit more. So that was my theory for using the laminated linings, because they're very narrow. Does that make a big difference? It's hard to say, but in theory it should, because there's more working area of the top. So I've been doing that for a long time.
That's like a different reason than a lot of people use, which is the stiffness aspect. Anyways. Hey, you know what I really love about your new instruments is the shapes. They are looking sexier than ever with that flow. Have you guys seen his new?
I haven't, but you said sexy, you know.
It looks Ono-licious. That's what it looks like.
He was still kind of groggy, but now he's awake.
Yeah, well, I had to make a lot of new tooling to make the laminated sides. And I thought to myself, well, I've been making the same shape for years, which I like. It's basically a classical Martin shape. That Martin with a little less pinched at the waist, so I open up the top a little bit more. But I decided to do something new, and I made it what I call a more contemporary shape. It's fuller in the lower bout, and the sound hole's a little bit farther north on the body, and so the upper bout is a little bit smaller than with the Martin shape. So there's just more of the top to work, which has got to be an important thing.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, it's a little more work, like your end block has to get curved and stuff like that. But I mean, I feel like it's got a real flow, and I think we should almost like start busting them out, so we're not just talking about them. Where are those parked? Hey, David, how do you stay lean? What's your diet?
Well, past couple of years, my diet has been that condition I was telling you about.
Yeah, tell us.
We're gonna put that on the podcast.
Really? Why not? Everybody deals with health issues.
Oh, I have
I guess let's put it this way: how come there haven't been a dozen more Ono ukuleles at the ukulele site in the last few years?
Well, I wasn't feeling well for a while.
Yeah.
But I'm back now.
back.
back.
It's like one of those drug advertisements.
Yeah,
Where-
yeah.
Yeah.
No, everything's okay.
Viagra.
Yeah. Well, that might help too.
Ukulele.
It's good for ukulele building.
What was the inspiration for naming your line of ukes Ono?
Well, as you know better than I do, it's
Tasty.
a couple of things in Hawaiian. It's the name for the fish, also called a wahoo, which is a great
Yeah.
game fish and eating fish, and that's really what's on my label. And there's also the other meaning in Hawaiian, which is something that is good, something that you like a lot, often applied to food that is delicious. And you tell me if I'm wrong, but I've been told that ono can also be used for other things when you say you like something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like something that not only tastes good, sounds good,
Super
looks
Ono.
good.
Yeah. So it's
So
kind of
ono.
it's a double meaning.
Yeah.
And it's a nice short word I could put on the headstock.
Cool. And easy to spell too, right?
Right.
Like if
Yeah,
you're a
I've
visitor
never-
and you hear about Ono,
I've
hey,
never
I
had to
think most people can
had
do
to
it.
change the spelling. I've always spelled
Well-
it correctly the first time.
I think a decade ago you bought a Pono, right?
Well, yeah, and I was aware of Pono because it was the first ukulele I bought. I bought a baritone and still have it. But when I got to thinking about what am I going to name my ukuleles, I didn't really think about Pono because Ono is a different word from Pono.
Oh yeah, I mean it's
It's
totally
a different meaning. And,
Sure.
and I keep feeling like I need to apologize for
Oh please.
to your father
It's
for
an
doing
entirely
that, but-
different word.
But it is a different word and it has a distinct meaning from Pono.
I mean, if you were doing like some large scale production, it might be something that would have caught his radar to be like, hey, but still yet, what are you going to do? I mean, like words are like that,
yeah,
especially when it comes to, 3 and 4 letter Hawaiian words. It's like,
yeah, and at this
oh,
point, it's like, who really cares? There's like 20 million different manufacturers of ukuleles out there. It's like,
yeah.
here's a straw. Just suck it up.
Oh, good advice for the kids of today. All right, so what you have in your hand now is what we've been talking about. Look at that.
It is indeed
So tasty.
sexy.
Delicious. I love the rosette being not a ring on the outside, but it just has this super classy look to it.
Well, I started doing that with I think it was about my third instrument. I was making the rosette and I made a mistake, and the only way I could fix the mistake was by doing it like this. So I said, okay, I'll do one like that. And at some point, someone saw that instrument and said, can you make me one like that? And I said, okay, I'll do that again. And so it kind of caught on. I don't claim to be the first person to ever do this,
Sure,
but that's
sure.
how I got started on it.
I love the look. I think it's perfect. The last Bohannon we got actually had that same look to it.
Yeah.
But, there's only so much real estate on a uke. I don't know. It just has a very clean, beautiful look to it. Classy.
Jake McClay's been doing that on
right,
his for some
Jake.
time.
Yeah,
He
yeah.
does a beautiful job. They're very, very elegant, simple and elegant.
Yeah, I think he's been at the top of that sort of tip as far as like clean, elegant. I know early on Jake did all kinds of fancy stuff with his rosettes and all like that, and then just kind of over time he's been like, no, I kind of like this refined, clean.
Yeah, he's zeroed in on a really nice look.
I love his builds, yeah.
Yeah.
But so people can see there what we were talking about with your new shape. There's a little bit of a happier look to the bridge. You put a slight of a smile on it, maybe.
Yeah.
And string through like they've been like that all along, or
All along,
yeah,
right from the beginning.
yeah.
Yeah, it's a simple, clean way of doing it. The theory, as I understand it, is that by having the string terminated up against the bridge plate on the underside of the top, more energy of the string gets transmitted directly to the top. And I'm not going to vouch for that theory. But there's also a theory about building instruments that if you have a pretty good uke, the difference between a pretty good uke and a really good uke might be 10% or something. That's just an arbitrary figure. And there's no single thing you can do to the pretty good uke to make it 10% better. You might be able to figure out 5 things to do that make it 2% better each. And so every little thing that you do is important to try and maximize the ability of the uke to make the kind of sound that you want it to make.
Right.
And that's just one of those little things. If stringing through like this makes a 2% difference, it's worth it to do.
Right. I mean, wood selection, the pitch of your neck. There's so many different things that go into the sound. But yeah, it's that whole formula that comes together. As far as like other things that are different on yours, I mean, I guess you've been using the water-based crystal lac for a while now. I feel like they were mostly true oil as you started, and then you got into spraying, right?
Yeah, and that's still my standard finish is true oil.
Right.
And some people prefer that because they feel that it is less likely to impair the ability of the top to vibrate. Again, controversial, but if that's if you feel that's important, it's a good finish.
It's just like what you were talking about there, though, to where like people are trying to pinpoint, like, oh, this is gonna be, but it's like, yeah, maybe 1%, but there's like all those other factors to where like, if you were comparing like when you sprayed to one that was true oil, it's like you still can't even really like make the judgment on that because there's all, even there's different.
Way too many variables.
Mm-hmm.
So you do the best you can with your concept, or the things that you want to incorporate in it that you think are going to be helpful in building an instrument that sounds pleasant.
Right. And with some of the benefits of a gloss finish like that is, especially with the softwood top, you're getting a more protective finish. And but it's just way more time intensive, wouldn't you say?
Oh yeah. Any sprayed finish, no matter what material you use, is way more time intensive than an oil finish.
Is it even legal to spray nitrocellulose in Oregon?
I don't know whether it is or isn't. I know that if I did it, my neighbors would get unhappy.
Yeah. It's pretty nasty stuff. I mean, like water-based finish is just a lot better for the person, the environment. It's just, I don't know, there's a certain kind of wet look to nitro, but I feel like the water-based is kind of a more natural look in a certain way.
It has a certain, I don't know if it's softness is the right word. It can be buffed to as good a gloss as other finishes. I think the way you perceive the depth of the finish might be a little different. I don't know whether it's
beautiful.
Better or worse.
That thing looks super amazing. So that's the regular 17-inch. And talk about, what type of spruce is that?
What type of what?
What type of spruce is the top?
Adirondack.
Adirondack.
With Adirondack bracing.
What a nice cut. I mean, it looks like top-notch level, too.
Yeah, it's hard to get really good Adirondack nowadays, especially with
tight grain,
consistent color and tight grain spacing.
I was about to say it's really consistent on the.
Yeah, this is a good set.
Yeah.
As part of my program with the 17-inch scale and the 18-inch scale was to use the same tops, so the tops are cut out of the same board.
Awesome.
And
it almost looks like Swiss moon spruce.
Yeah, it does have a European, almost creamy look to it.
Yeah, it's very white. Also, it stays whiter than Sitka does, at least to my eye.
Yeah, sure, definitely. Sides and back on that guy is Zircote, or what is that one?
Yeah, sides and back are Zircote.
Look at those angel wings.
Yeah, I was about to say.
Well, this one I call the twin vultures because to me these
yeah.
two things look like vulture heads with the beak. I don't know how Mother Nature did it, but Mother Nature planted an eye right in the right place.
Like they're facing each other almost.
Yeah, it's like or maybe a vulture looking in the mirror.
That's dope. And tap that back just to give people a sense of what you were talking about in terms of the tap tone of your laminate.
Yeah.
It's still it's really resonant.
Yeah, there's sustain in it too, which is I think generally speaking, most builders would say that's a good thing. It's hard to quantify the effect of a more resonant back versus a less resonant back, and in the guitar world, I haven't heard this so much in the uke world, but in the guitar world, there are people who are really careful about harmonizing, if that's the right word, the front and the back. They actually they tune the back to the properties of the top. And as I say, I'm not aware of uke builders doing that, but perhaps some do. The back is a little different proposition, though. It doesn't need to have the mass that the sides do. That's what's important under the Gore theory. It's not so much stiffness; it's mass or weight. There's no reason to make the back massive or heavier than it needs to be. So what I do is the inner and outer layers are molded in with the grain running in the usual direction longitudinally. On these, the inner layer is Adirondack spruce set cross grain.
So three-piece laminate.
Three pieces, yeah.
Right.
And the back is thinner than the sides. It's still thicker than a conventionally built back would be, but it's stiff enough that no back braces are required.
Right. So it's like that. That's the trade-off kind of a thing. But it's funny with back because like most people have it against their belly. It doesn't even really matter because they're dampening 75% of what would be the.
Yeah. Well, it's just another feature of instruments that's controversial.
Yeah, controversial, I guess, is a little rich. But yeah, people do manage to make controversy in forums about such things. But let's take a look at the 18-inch. And you don't even go with the conventional scale lengths. You're just trying to break the rules all over the place.
Well, yeah, and that started with concerts, and maybe we should talk about the concert here for a second, because that's how I got started on the unconventional scale lengths.
Man, that thing is beautiful.
This concert is also built with laminated sides, although there are only 2 thicknesses, because it's a smaller instrument. That's adequate to do the job, and 2 on the back as well. The outer is very nice curly koa, and the inside is mahogany. Before I started building, I bought a number of instruments, and one of them was a super concert made by a well-known manufacturer, and those are a concert body with a 17-inch or tenor scale. And
I feel like there was something wrong with it because you didn't mention the brand name. I don't know.
No, there's nothing wrong with it. Excellent instrument of highest repute, and for somebody it would be a good instrument. But for me, I thought it was the 17-inch scale and neck was a little bit too long for the body, both in terms of balance and in terms of the amount of energy that was available from the strings. Just didn't seem to be lining up well with the volume and the resonance of the body. And that could be just me. That's a very subjective thing. But I eventually sold it, and after I started building, I built a number of concerts, and I thought back to that experience of having a longer neck, and I thought, well, what about if I try a 16-inch neck instead of the 17-inch neck that I didn't like? So I built one, and I found that it has more finger room on the board. It's just the fret spacing's a little bit wider, which makes it a little bit better for at least whatever.
A little wider lengthwise.
Yeah, yeah.
Same nut wise, but yeah.
If you have bigger fingers, I suppose that's a good option. But I also felt that the amount of energy that the strings were imparting to the size and volume of the body was really appropriate. It seemed like it made an improvement in the tone. And anytime you put a longer scale on, the instrument's going to be a little bit mellower. One way of putting it.
You think? With longer scale?
With a longer scale, it tends to make it a little, well, in terms of ukes, maybe a better way to put it would be the percussiveness of it. The smaller the uke is, the more it tends to be a percussive instrument. The sopranos being the most.
I hear that in terms of like punchiness, like
Yeah.
in that low mid range.
Yeah. And making the scale a little bit longer does make it a little less percussive and a little more melodic.
Right.
So I found that it was a good compromise between the regular 15-inch concert scale and the 17-inch that I had. And since I started building the 16 inches, I think I've maybe had one order for a 15-inch. Everybody wants the 16 inches.
Yeah, they still fit in a concert case too. It
Yeah.
still pretty much feels like a concert, but it's just got that scale. I mean,
And
I guess part of it is, string pairing too and stuff like that.
Sure,
but,
always.
Yeah.
And
I like them.
This is 15 frets to the body also. 14 on this, which
right,
is
right,
a
right.
little more than you'd usually see on a concert. So
Yeah.
it gives a little more room on the fretboard for people like Corey and Calais who make use of it.
Oh, yeah. They're going to need at least 17 frets to body.
So
no.
that's how I got.
Man, that thing is really pretty.
started
What
on-
is it? Is that bloodwood binding or what?
Yeah, it's
Or
bloodwood with black and white purfling. I don't know if you can pick that up, but
I love it.
so I went through a similar thought process with the tenors, and I wondered what would
Look at
happen if
that
I
myrtle.
tried a slightly longer scale than the usual 17-inch scale. And now I've made several of the 18-inchers. I've been doing it for probably 4 years. And
18-inch.
yeah, the 18-inchers.
tenor, yeah.
And
Did you build any 19?
I've never built a 19.
Yeah.
I'd do it if somebody
Right,
asked,
right.
but people haven't asked for them.
No, I think it's a good. I don't know. I mean, the thing is, like, Kamaka used their old baritone neck, which the scale was 19,
That was
and then
the
people just
traditional-
kind of like, or people would take their old school baritone 19-inch and tune it up like a tenor, and that kind of like started the thing. And it's the same thing with like concerts being like the long neck. Well, they just took the tenor neck, but I almost feel like 16 and 18 is more kind of like, I don't know. I think it's appropriate for.
I think it's better. Like honestly, like
Clay just said it.
I'm not gonna lie. I for a while I played a 16-inch concert.
That's right. The first one, like your first custom one, right?
My first custom ukulele, and I always wondered why that concert felt more comfortable than all the other concerts. And when we put in the order, he's a good family friend of ours, and he said, well, this one's kind of in between a concert and a tenor. I didn't get it. I didn't know nothing about scale. And I was like, okay. I was like, let's try it out. And I still have it to this day. And so 16-inch concert scale, I'm totally for it.
Good. I'm glad to hear that.
What do you guys think about 18-inch? Because you had Kala make you a
Mine is
custom
an
that was
18.
18-inch.
Yeah, and I was playing a 19 for a long time, but no matter how long or the amount of time I put into it, I could never get used to it. So after I switched to an 18, I was like, yes, this is perfect.
Right.
It seems a little more, what were you saying, appropriate for calling it a super tenor or super concert.
Well, there you go. Calais and Corey gave you the scale length approval.
Well, that's a relief.
Yeah, right.
It is.
Well, I'm glad that we got to try out, both scale lengths prior to the podcast. So
Oh, well, we still have yet to see what they think about your ukes, though, because they'll give a pretty scathing review.
spoiler alert, I got to try them out already. So I can't wait to play them again.
Okay, cat's out of the bag. They're awesome.
Yeah, several of the people who've bought them are people who do a lot of picking, and they seem to feel that the longer scale is more conducive to good picking. And I'll leave that up to you guys to.
What do you guys think?
I completely agree.
Pickers.
I tend to pick more on super concerts, and
He's picky.
I'm pretty picky.
Just don't pick on the luthier.
Yeah.
Definitely not.
A good instrument, strum it, pick it, whatever. It's gonna sound good. That myrtle is gorgeous. I'm salivating.
Yeah, this is a pretty piece of wood. It's called Bastogne.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was
walnut.
just looking from here. I was like thinking it was a myrtle cut.
It looks
Yeah,
like myrtle.
this is Bastogne walnut, which is a pretty unusual wood. It's a naturally occurring hybrid of two different walnut species. And this came from Northern California. The two species that seem to do that are Claro walnut and English walnut. And every so often there'll be a Claro tree near an English tree, and the pollen will get together and make a Bastogne tree. The Bastogne tree doesn't produce viable acorns, so it doesn't reproduce itself. So you might have
So it's more rare.
yeah, it makes it quite rare. And every so often, someone comes across a Bastogne tree that's been chopped down or is a windfall, and they scarf up the wood, and there are some people down in Northern California who are able to supply it, but not very many. It also tends to make interesting colors. There's more variability of color in across Bastogne trees from
Is it slightly
from tree to
lighter
tree.
than Claro?
Sometimes, but not always.
Right.
It often is.
Because that looks like kind of a lighter.
Yeah, it is. And I've got some Bastogne that in which the not the sapwood, but the sapwood is usually light in color. That's
Sure.
the wood on the outside of the tree. This is heartwood, which means what is most of the dimension or diameter of the tree is heartwood. I've got some Bastogne that has almost blonde heartwood in a basket weave, which is basket weave is a curly figure, but going in both directions, so it makes kind of square luminescent patches, and that's white walnut. Come
Yeah.
on, whoever heard of that?
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
I would love to get a uke from you
It's
with that.
it's nice wood to build with.
Do you get a lot more sets doing a laminate? As far as, I mean, you're resawing it, right? So it's quite a
Yeah.
bit thinner.
Yeah. I do resaw it thinner because it ends up being, for the outer layer, 45 or 50 thousandths of an inch on the sides, whereas your total thickness of a single solid side tenor would be, depending on the wood, 65 to 75 thousandths.
Right. Or
And so you're slicing the slices a little bit thinner. So if you're lucky, you can get a couple more slices out of a board.
but you're not going to be able to take a pre-cut set and get two out of it.
No, generally not. I can do that. Sometimes I'll buy acoustic guitar sets, and some of the suppliers do make those quite a bit thicker. And there are some acoustic guitar sets that can be resawn if you do a
Gotta
good
have a
job
good
right down the
bandsaw,
middle and get a double out of it. But generally, you can't do that. So it's better to buy boards and resaw them yourself. It's more economical.
Right. Bastogne.
Bastogne walnut. Yep.
Beautiful.
Yeah, Bastogne, I'm told, means bastard in French, and that's in recognition of
Oh, yeah, because...
something about how it's made.
Makes a lot of sense.
The last name would be Snow. Yeah, Game of Thrones people.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Anyways,
I don't have time for Game of Thrones.
of course not. That's okay. It'll be there for you when you retire.
Oh yeah,
Oh, we get to binge watch it.
binge watch 40 years later.
Hey, David, let me ask you to swap seats with Corey, and
Sure.
We'll start getting some samples. What do you think of the sound, Corey?
I like it's really open and it's not too bassy.
It sounds good, like a whole step down too.
What type of strings does it have?
The uke logic with the smooth wound.
Ooh, a favorite here at the ukulele site. I'm about to list those too. Joel made the listings. I just have to look it over and put them up.
Watch them
So-
disappear.
So by the time that we publish this, Uke Logic strings should be available from the ukulele site.
Yes.
What did you think of them, David?
The thing that really impressed me right off the bat is that there seems to be really good balance from string to string in terms of the quality of the sound and also the volume of the sound that each string produces. It's a nice set.
Balance?
Yeah,
Yeah.
sweet, very sweet sounding.
Yeah, I feel like they're not quite as pointed as most fluorocarbons, you know? They've got a little bit more roundness on the high end, which I like.
And these are the soft set that,
Oh, really?
yeah, there's a hard
Yeah.
set, as you know, which is going to be a little bit brighter.
Ooh. But the hard tensions bring out even more volume and punch.
Yeah.
Probably.
I almost feel like with this whole step, down tuning, I think maybe the hards might also work well with it.
That could very well be true.
What are you talking about? A whole step down?
It's actually tuned in B flat instead of C.
Oh.
Yeah, so with the 18-inch super tenor that he brought, it's actually tuned a whole step down.
But okay, so that's right. Which, if somebody bought this, there'd be no problem in tuning it GCEA.
No.
But as is, you feel like a step down, it's kind of a little more open. And what do you think, David, as far as that difference?
I do like the tone when it's tuned down. I had it tuned down a half step, and I thought it was good. I actually like the half step better than the full step where it is right now.
Forward of the time.
There's something with
It's-
half a step down on tuning because
Whole step for this one.
yeah, but growing up we used to play a lot of songs that were tuned half step down.
Oh, it's called being flat.
What do you call?
Pure Heart. A lot of their songs.
Yeah,
were
Pure Heart.
Kyle Creative Voice.
Yep.
So I always thought that was the right tuning, and when I grew up, I realized, wow, I was wrong the whole time. But it all sounded good. That's all that mattered.
Actually, textbook-wise, a tenor should be tuned in B flat. That's actually preferred tenor tuning.
I think Jimi Hendrix was always E flat, right? Half step down.
Even Stevie Ray Vaughan,
recording.
right? That's
It's
what he-
Stevie Ray.
I almost feel
Ingalls,
like they used to do that so
completely
nobody
different.
could figure out their songs.
No, it's because it's a little bit sweeter. I don't
Just-
know. Yeah.
Let's try this. Wait, let's do a sound sample with this tuning, and then half a
Yeah,
step
maybe.
down. And
Well, I mean that's in B flat now, so but the regular tenor you have tuned GCEA,
Yes.
so the string tension is probably more equal.
Yeah, that's why I tuned that down in the first place, is so that I'd have a more direct comparison between the sound of the 17-inch and the 18-inch. If the strings are different in tension, that's going to have a big effect on the
Right.
sound.
Interesting.
I want to try and isolate the effect of the difference in the scale lengths. But
Yeah.
there's no reason in the world it can't be
Sure.
tuned as an ordinary tenor.
Right. Okay. Corey, give us a 1 minute thing that we can also compare with the 17 inch. Wow.
That was really, really good sustain for fairly low tension strings. Because I think this is like really light. Or what did Joel give you on these? Was this the lighter?
Yeah, the soft tension.
The soft.
Okay. And then.
But yeah, try
Sounds
just
like what it
hit
sounds like.
one chord and hold it. It's like really nice sustain. But yeah, I mean, you were saying volume and sustain you hear better in your new laminate side and back.
Yeah, that's true.
And I was holding it against my body, so it's a lot different. With
Oh, let's hear the difference, like holding it against your body and not.
So this is me hugging it. And this is me holding it away.
Wow, it really opens it up.
And then try it with this tuning.
So if your playing tends to like bother the people in your house, you can hug it a little tighter and.
So this is half a step.
Half a step. Just go up to G.
This is F sharp.
Okay.
Whatever the rest is.
What do you think?
Actually, I like the lower tuning better.
Now go up to G.
Regular G.
Yeah. Your smile is all mischief, like we're like gonna break something. He's like, yeah, let's do it.
Nah, don't worry. Those strings are tough. I did like 5 shows with them before they started to peel.
You lose a lot of the low end sound with this standard tuning. But then the real, like the true tonal characteristics of spruce really comes out when you're having this tuning, right? Like that real bright and clear kind of sound.
I almost feel though the B flat tuning kind of balances, like the brightness of the spruce with like warmth because it's tuned lower.
How about G sharp? Keep going up. No.
We'll do Canadian tuning. We'll just go.
Yes.
On an 18-inch? Oh no.
Oh, that would be bright and thin.
Okay, I'll tune it back down.
That one's the bastard.
Okay, am I in position?
both Adirondack?
Yes.
This has really, really good sustain.
I love. It's like what is the? Do you just like do the same finish on the necks, but then like hit it with like some, like steel wool and like, or like how do you get this on the neck, like that?
Ooh, so smooth.
I feel like it's like a wax and steel wool. I remember.
Yeah, the necks are done completely with epoxy resin.
Oh, that's why. Talk about that.
Well,
So smooth.
I like the feeling. It doesn't have any much stickiness to it. Your hand slides really nicely on
Yeah.
it. And if there's any finishing material that's going to be durable on a neck, it's epoxy, because it's not going to be subject to breakdown from hand oils and perspiration in the same way that a lot of other finishes are. So it should be durable. And it's the epoxy I'm using imparts a nice color to the wood. So I've been doing it that way for quite a while, and unless somebody specifically wants something different, that's just my standard now.
Nice. Did you ever make surfboards?
No,
I know you used to make boats.
I've done that, yeah. I'm done with it.
You're done with boats?
I finally learned my lesson.
If you want your boat repaired, call David Ingalls. 555.
No, if you want someone to help you play with your boat, call me.
Yeah. Beer and a weekend. Yeah, let's do it.
You guys weren't paying attention. I tuned it up to Canadian. Went up north a lot.
Wow, that's why it sounded extra happy. Sounded like it had free healthcare. Oh my gosh.
That's what it sounds like, probably. When you- oh. That sounds really good too. Okay, back to the rest of the world.
Canadians. Beautiful.
This thing is really fun to play. It feels great.
What percentage better does it sound than the last 16-inch Ono? You played it?
Particularly 17% better.
You think so too? All right, Kalei, let's get you in there.
Yeah. Looks good. Feels good.
Yeah, the new shape is beautiful. I especially like the cases you choose too.
Nothing but the finest.
Oh yeah. Oahu. Have you always used UPT Gotos?
Ever since they came out.
Right.
Yeah, that's my standard now.
Oh yeah. It's got that wonderful rotten kombucha kind of a.
It also has pineapple and lime and other fruit juices.
Yeah. Is Ashland full of kombucha and?
Oh yeah, very hip place.
Yeah. Figured Oregon's like pretty on it. Like 7 vegan restaurants in 2 blocks and
Yeah, pretty much. The trends start there.
yeah. Hey. Pretty cool. I really enjoyed Portland when I went there a few years ago. How far away are you guys from Portland?
It's about 300 miles.
Oh, that's a while.
Yeah, it's a big state.
Yeah.
We get up there pretty regularly, and Portland's a great town.
Yeah.
There's a lot going
They've
on.
always got like music stuff happening all the time. Anyways. All right, so Kalei is going to sample the concert. Do you even call it concert 16-inch scale, or it's just like that's your concert?
No, I'll do it either way.
Okay.
I'm happy with
Just call
whatever
it
the customer feels is best for the customer's style of playing.
superior concert.
The Super Ono concert.
I like the thickness of the neck.
How
I tend
would
to
you
make
describe
my
that?
necks, on the thin side.
Yeah, it's thinner, but
The overall shape makes it easy to play.
yeah, I just like the way it's rounded off because it's kind of flat in the middle. I noticed, and that actually feels really comfortable for concert ukulele. Because I noticed like when they put like a 17-inch on, as a super concert should be, or the standard super concert is normally, it almost feels like a tenor, but the body's like smaller. I think like this type of neck shape like matches the overall feel of the instrument when you're holding it up against your body.
Yeah,
Hey,
it doesn't seem like it's as much of a hybrid as a super concert is with a
Yeah.
17-inch.
Can you show the new cantilever there at the end of the fretboard?
Yeah,
And
I was looking at that.
Alan,
and
if you can catch that with a close-up so people can see what we were talking about earlier. The fretboard used to just extend, which is fine, but I love that sleekness of that new look with the angled piece underneath. When did you start doing that, David?
Right off the bat. Before I started building,
No, but when did you change the cantilever?
oh gosh, in the last year or so.
Right.
It's pretty recent.
I'm sorry, what you were...
Oh, I have to give credit where credit is due. The only other uke I know of that uses a cantilevered board is the Compass Rose that's
Yeah.
built by Rick Turner in Santa Cruz.
Uh-huh.
And before I started building, I had one of his Alcoa tenors. And I kind of used that as a model for that construction technique. It made sense to me. And I looked at the precedent for it. This isn't the first time somebody thought of doing a cantilevered neck. Some classical guitars have had them, and some archtop guitars. And even there are some in both of those categories that don't actually have the end of the fretboard cantilevered, but it's still raised over the top with a wedge in between. And I understand the reason for doing that is that it allows you to get to the farther down the fretboard a little bit easier. You can reach those frets since just sort of mechanically it's easier to do that than when the fretboard is right down on the top. And it's not as effective for that as a cutaway would be, but it still helps.
All right, Clay, let's get a proper sound sample. Proper one, not none of Corey's funny business. No.
What?
No, it's playing.
So it is. So since it's a 16-inch scale, like one of my first custom ukuleles, here's actually part of the first song I ever wrote.
Nice.
Which was done on a 16-inch scale concert.
These are individual cuts?
Which one is that? Yeah, they're little pieces of Amazon rosewood that are just laid in a one
It's
next
hard
to the other
see
around a
cuts
circle.
because of the grain lines.
Yeah.
But it
Oh yeah.
has a super cool look to it.
That's another beautiful wood.
This one, I can hear the difference on that. On this one.
Difference in what? What do you mean?
Like, you know when you hug it up against your
Oh.
body?
right,
And then when you just...
Yeah.
It's pretty big. Well, through the headphones.
Oh yeah, no, I hear it. So, Adirondack spruce top, Zircote side and back. What type of binding does that one have?
Bindings are Granadillo.
Ooh, Granadillo.
Granadillo.
Beautiful. I love when it's like kind of contrasting with similar colors, like in that same palette.
Yeah, those two colors go together particularly well.
Yeah.
They're different, but they're kind of in the
Complementary.
same area of color range.
Right. Do you always use ebony for your fretboard and bridges?
Almost always.
Have you ever tried Madagascar rosewood?
Yes, I've built one or two with Madagascar, and I've got some of the material that I can use, so I'll be doing more of them.
It's a hard one to get, but yeah, it's got.
Yeah, it is, and that you probably know more about this than I do. I think those all of the other rosewood species are coming off of restriction, aren't
Yep.
they?
Yeah.
That's one reason I haven't used the Madagascar
Right.
very often, is because you get into the whole CITES thing, but that's going to change real quick, isn't it?
I think it's already
In a few days.
Yeah.
November 30th, right? Is supposedly
Hey.
when we
Rosewood is open for sale.
clear.
Again.
Okay.
We're in the clear for rosewood.
Yeah, that'll free up a lot of woods that we can use for instruments that are going to get shipped overseas.
Sure. It only affects international sales, but still, it's like
Wow,
It's
this
been
score
a-
sounds amazing.
it's been a hard thing to deal with. So I'm stoked. What do you think, Calais?
The sustain is
overtones are-
amazing.
Yeah, the sustain is insane.
Wow. Yeah.
It's like the ukulele just doesn't want to stop singing.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Love it.
sounds good. Love the overtones.
It's a
Like when
level
you do
of
like major 7 chords, it's just like
it's like that. There's natural reverb going on, which is very beautiful. Wait, just do that chord. Just a good. Yeah.
Built-in tremolo.
You know what's strange is that even though I know mentally that this is like 18, I could pick it up and
Just think regular tenor.
just start playing and not have to really think about like, okay, well, this, instrument has an inch longer in scale, which most times when I pick up a 19-inch, I really got to look at my fingers because a lot of times like
in
I'm
the
not gonna
stretch. Yeah.
yeah, either I'm not going to stretch enough, or I stretch too much.
Right.
For me, I have larger hands, so it just feels better in every way. Stretching chords and just doing regular chords, it feels a lot better.
David, love what you're doing, man.
Thank you. It's great to hear these guys play them. They always make a luthier sound good.
Like I always say, it's 95% ukulele.
Yeah.
We sound much better when we play like a good instrument.
Yeah, it helps, right?
You sound good when you play a bad instrument.
No, sometimes we struggle.
Oh, we don't like
Ask
bad
Andrew.
instruments around here. We don't allow them.
I didn't mean here in the store. I meant just
No,
off in
no.
the woods
Yeah.
someplace.
It definitely makes a difference, and I think people can hear. And I love what you're doing. It's got its own sound that I feel like even shines through with the differences that you make over the years. And if you guys have listened this far, you're probably fans of ours or Ono Ukulele's, Calais and Corey. And if you want Corey and Calais to continue to get paid and survive, then
And eat.
you're gonna have to buy ukuleles at the ukulelesite.com.
Each
You gotta
ukulele
go-
is one meal. No, I'm just kidding.
And yeah, so preferably these Ono ukuleles as they're available. They'll come up soon. But yeah, otherwise I don't know. Corey's gonna have to find like an IT job maybe, and Calais will be fishing in his backyard, and yeah.
Nah, I'll probably just be like gigging 7 days a week. And
Oh wow, you've already got your exit strategy.
No.
Come on, man.
there's a backup plan.
Trying to
the
paint a
backup
picture
plan.
here
Yeah.
of you.
He was just
sad
joking, man. I see where you're at now.
Yeah. All right. We love you guys, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you so
Aloha.
much. Mahalo.
All right. Thanks, David. I hope I didn't forget anything, or I don't know.
No, that was great.
Cool.
I like that one a lot.
I'd love to hear you guys play my instruments. It's like it's the payoff.
It's
I know.
I guess it's a newer design. It's different in a really good way.
Yeah, there's more top to go to work, which is probably a good thing.
I noticed the sustained right off the
But yeah, and there was until this weekend, the only two people I knew who were building laminated sides were me and Bo.
bat.
And
I don't know, Bo's. He's
yeah, he's been doing it for a while, and
Is it for that
So-
reason or just overall?
yeah, well,
stability?
he does it because he believes that it increases sustain and volume. But there was a luthier at the Guild show, a guy named Jung Tae Kim.
Oh, was that Allcraft or was that one?
He's Chisel.
Oh, Chisel. Okay.
Yeah, he's Chisel.
Oh,
And,
Jitsu.